What power does Scripture have when left to the interpretation of man? We've heard before of people using Bible verses to justify things that otherwise wouldn't seem very biblical, but what if that could be utilized politically? It's no secret that American politics across its entire 250 years of history has been at many times intertwined with the faith of the public. The Great Awakenings, the moral majority. Even today, much of the American Bible Belt, a term that largely comes from politics, sees their faith as instrumental in their voting patterns. And so the idea that faith could drive politics isn't that far out of the realm of possibility. But as we enter this discourse of Iran being positioned as this horrific theocracy and America being positioned as this rational, secularist state, we have to start asking some questions about the motivations of our political actors and just how secular things really are here. Sure, our government and foreign policy isn't being driven by Christian belief. I think that we can all agree upon. But maybe somebody else's belief is sitting in the driver's seat. Maybe we're fulfilling a different kind of prophecy. A little less salvation, a little more Shapiro. Folks, welcome back to The Narrative with me, your host, Vrillium, the host with the most and the most dispensations. Folks, insane news the past few days. Honestly, I wish the algorithm let me make a video every day, if not every hour, because it seems every single hour of the past 3 days has been a political event of its own. I'm speaking, of course, about everything going on in Iran with President Donald Trump. It has been an absolute whirlwind of a weekend. It has been ups, it's been downs. I mean, honestly, it has been dramatic to say the least. I think we can officially say that we have entered Schrodinger's World War III, the war that is both happening and not happening, destroying our world and rebuilding it. Let me give you the quick timeline. There's supposed to be peace talks. Trump threatens Iran with complete annihilation. The Israeli public media and Zionist political actors in America absolutely celebrate this. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, the likes condemn this unilaterally. At the 11th hour, Trump supposedly works out a deal. All of a sudden, we're not going to horrific nuclear war. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, all skeptical about this. MAGA slopfluencers praise Trump's ability to navigate such a difficult situation, and Mark Levin seethes. Like, actually. You actually might have seen this clip going around.
That to me is morally very difficult to accept.
I mean, the guy's literally shaking. Like, they want war with Iran so bad, it's not even funny. And you can see this reflected in all of both the state messaging and public messaging from Israel. It was just the other day, it was going around that Israeli news had a countdown timer to the expiration of Trump's deadline for Iran, meaning the deadline wherein afterwards we would go to war with them. They've gone out of their way to assassinate several people involved in the peace process. Like, they are doing literally everything they can to sabotage any kind of peace process. And so it begs the question, why? And if you watch my video on something like Kabbalah or my video on Chabad, you know why. You know the religious convictions behind it. You know the sentiments and politics behind it. But a grander question here stands in America. Sure, we get why they're doing it. We get why they want to do it from their beliefs. It's central to their beliefs. But why are American Christians so in favor of this? Why would American Christians want to support an ideology that innately says that Christ isn't Christ, and in some cases is outright insulting and offensive to the Christian doctrine? Well, that's a bit of a story. But before we get into all that, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell to get notified whenever I make a new post. I'd like to jump into a very, very interesting story about American history, faith, and the end times. Christian Zionism, a phrase as oxymoronic as it is sensical. Christian Zionism has been the prevailing and completely dominant theological thought in America for decades now. It's only really recently that Christian Zionism is beginning to be questioned. This Christian Zionism, which still does have a large hold over the American Bible Belt and much of the boomer generation, where where does that come from? How did that form? I mean, the state of Israel isn't even 100 years old. So clearly this had to form at some point. Like, the state of Israel was not being pondered during the Crusades. So at some point, this had to be created. And the answer lies in something you might have heard of called dispensationalism. And see, dispensationalism is a theology. It's a form of Christian theology, specifically a Protestant Christian theology. It's called dispensationalism because the belief centers around the idea that all of human history can be separated into different eras, those eras being called dispensations. There isn't an exact agreed upon amount. However, most people say it's seven different eras, one of which will include the tribulation, so the time before the second coming, and then the last one, the seventh one, is the second coming, Christ returns, and 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. Preceding that, so directly before the tribulation, so like the great struggles on earth, there'll be something called the rapture. Now that, I imagine, you are familiar with. Let me note, the rapture, not found anywhere in the Bible, not mentioned in the Bible. It is actually not a part of mainstream Christian doctrine for any organized church. Now, alongside, or really at the center of all of this, is a very, very important role played by the Jewish people. See, the idea of dispensationalism implies that, like, there's this grander timeline with different eras. And so the original Christian understanding of fulfillment, that being that Christ fulfills certain things in the Old Testament, dispensationalism throws that away on several accounts. The most notable being the promise of the land of Israel to the children of Abraham, who obviously we identify today as modern Jews, to varying degrees of skepticism depending upon who you ask. This changes things about the Bible. You have to understand, the mainstream Christian doctrine, and like the Christian doctrine for a very, very, very long time, was that the Jewish people are completely unrelated. They are a different religion. They are a different people. They have completely left, like, the faith of God. They don't worship God because they reject Christ, because the Bible, like, makes that pretty clear. But now this completely flips the script and says that no, actually, they're still in the game, they're still involved, and they are the central figures of the world. And that it is the duty of anyone who is Christian to focus all of their time and energy and money and foreign policy towards them. You may be asking yourself, okay, what does that mean politically? And how could an ideology that is just so conveniently good to this one group of people who were historically not seen very positively by Christians, how does this proliferate itself in America? Well, for that, we need to take a look at a very, very special book, or more aptly, commentary on the special book. In 2004, U.S. soldiers stationed in Baghdad, Iraq, noticed that local peddlers were selling an interesting product. The Osama bin lighter made waves in the U.S. military. Only a limited amount of these were purchased with no tracking number by U.S. soldiers in Iraq, never to be seen again, until one brave man decided to bring back this iconic product. Available for pre-order now, Lord Miles has brought back the Osama bin lighter, now sold in a perfect stainless steel metal casing, USB-C recharging, and of course, an included soundtrack. Folks, be sure to check the link in the description of this video to get yours today. Folks, time is running out on these. Only a limited number will be created, so be sure to pre-order yours today and secure yourself a new piece of classic history with the iconic Osama bin lighter. Now let's get back to the video. Cyrus Scofield is arguably one of the most influential religious figures in American history, next to, I don't know, Joseph Smith, a Civil War veteran from the Confederate side, who was elected to Congress, then was thrown out of Congress for committing fraud, was abandoned by his wife, accused publicly of army desertion, and went absolutely bankrupt. In 1879, after all of this, he decides to go and be reborn as an evangelical Christian. You have to understand, at this time, the Third Great Awakening is in full swing. In America, we've had these periods of time called the Great Awakenings. There's been 3 official ones. Some say that there's a 4th one. More on that later. Basically, it's periods of time in American history in which Christianity, specifically Protestant Christianity, or like revivalism, becomes a very popular thing. And it usually revolves around like a socio-political activity or a socio-political cause. The first Great Awakening happened in the 1730s all the way up to the 1740s, so actually prior to the establishment of the United States as an independent country, and this was largely like a proliferation of Enlightenment ideals and rebellion against the Anglican Church, and honestly, it played a huge role in the founding of our country because that is the environment that like the founding fathers grew up in, was this like sweeping low church religious revival going on across the country, or I guess across the colonies. The Second Great Awakening basically surrounded all of the frontier expansion. Actually, it's during the Second Great Awakening that Mormonism forms. So if that gives you any indication of what was going on. Basically, Christian movements see the frontier as this like new horizon to go and start religious communities, and that's the Second Great Awakening. The Third Great Awakening, now this one is more explicitly like urban and more specifically political. This is because it surrounds a couple core ideas, the main ones being the Civil War, slavery, and prohibition. People don't realize that prohibition, while yes being pushed by the suffragettes, was also pushed very, very heavily during the Third Great Awakening. And it's in this time that our friend Scofield here decides to get into faith. He learns of dispensationalism and, more specifically, takes an interest in dispensationalism's ideas surrounding the modern Jewish people. It's here that Scofield has a magical revelation and decides that, yes, we need to bring this to the masses. We need to take this theological idea, turn it into something that's understandable by the average audience, and then bring it to the world. This is when he starts to put together the Scofield Reference Bible. You know, when you hear people mention Bible verses or like try to use Bible verses to justify American support for Israel, this is where it starts. It starts with the Scofield Reference Bible. Basically, it's just the King James Bible with some translations change to like better fit the argument. And then all along it, there's commentary from Scofield, who, let me note, again, is just a guy. He was ordained a Congregationalist pastor, but in like low, that doesn't mean anything. There's no tests for that. He writes this commentary. He writes basically this Bible and puts it together, prints it through the Oxford Publishing Press, and now the Scofield Bible exists. Some people say that the Scofield Bible was written by Zionist political actors at the time. You have to understand, around this time, 1909, when this book comes out, this is like full swing early Zionism in Europe. I mean, during the life and times of Theodore Herzl, the first Zionist Congress, like this is a very, very big time for Zionist political thought, especially in the lead up to World War I. It's very clear, however, that Scofield, like, he really did believe this stuff. Like, this was his actual belief. Or at the very least, he was being sensationalist, trying to make money, but not for any political reason. Like, there was no political reason behind him writing it. What was political was the publishing of it. Because, see, he received a lot of funding from members of the Lotos Club, an elite New York social club that was pretty much full of people who were aligned with the Zionist cause. Because, again, like I just said, the Zionist cause at this time is basically the talk of the town in Europe. And that conversation now spills into New York. They find this random guy from Bible Belt America who's written this commentary. He's credentialed like enough that it can seem legit, but crazy enough that he would do all of this. And so he receives a lot of money and funding from the Lotos Club and all these various Zionist political actors, people who support the early ruminations of a state of Israel. All of them start giving money to this guy and say, we need to print as many of these as possible. And so at that point, 10 million copies of this Bible are sold across America, mostly to like low church, like Congregationalist pastors. So not to people who are like casually reading the Bible, it's to people who are leading congregations. So in that 10 million, we can only assume how many people that's influencing. And so it's at this time that this starts to take a hold in the American public, zeitgeist surrounding faith. However, let me note though, this is still at the time like a very faith-driven thing, okay? There's no political reality to it yet, and it's not in discussion in DC. And really, it only takes hold majorly in the Bible Belt. This is where all this stuff is going on, the Bible Belt and the New Frontier and all these different places. It's not really happening in the major urban centers. It's not happening in the political centers. It's happening basically in like the outback. I will say I don't think that there was much of a political push behind the Scofield Bible. I think it's been proliferated that there was. I don't think so. And honestly, I think to claim so, like, it gets a lot of people off the hook that absolutely should not be off the hook. And this is because, again, dispensationalism, rapture theology, all this, all this stuff, really Christian Zionism as we understand it, that didn't become a meaningful political force until the advent of the television. Funny enough, this television angle actually first starts with a book. In 1970, a seminary graduate by the name of Hal Lindsey publishes a book called The Late Great Planet Earth. It was actually literally the most popular nonfiction book of its year. This is the first time in which we see in popular American culture prophetic knowledge. What do I mean by that? Obviously, the guy wasn't actually like a prophet of God. No, this is just a phrase that we can use to describe a certain kind of faith-tainment, of like Christian-based, low church-based, like middle American faith-driven content, basically. Imagine like a Cold War Bryce Crawford, if you will. Now that book deserves its own breakdown, but to give you the skinny on it, it basically describes the Earth, like basically the countries of that era, describing them in their like biblical placing, and then providing this prophecy, this specifically dispensationalist prophecy of the end times based off of that, basically claiming that the Soviet Union is Gog, like from the Bible, and that Europe is the new Roman Empire, and like it's this total like nonsensical like boomer slop, and yet this was the most popular book. This is like the state of church and Christian thought that boomers are being raised in. So let me note that, okay, if you ever wonder where that comes from. Now, it's this book that popularizes in like the common dogma, the common mindset, the idea of dispensationalism, the rapture, and the idea of dispensationalism's view of the Jewish people. This also comes at a time in which, like, there is a state of Israel. I mean, 1970 is only 3 years off from the 1967 Arab-Israeli war. And so, like, Israel is in the political news. So not only is dispensationalism now coming to the American public, now there's a place to put all of that energy. There is a state of Israel at this time. And so this sweeps across Protestant America. All of this becomes political, like I said, at the advent of television. More specifically, something we now call televangelism. The 1970s and 1980s are known for their insane increase in faith-based television content. This is because television licenses were made cheaper at the time, and if you had like a ministry and claimed that your television program was part of your ministry, it was a tax write-off. And so suddenly all of these like charismatic ministers and pastors across the country could get access to TV. It made a lot of money in advertising, and it was really cheap to do. Like, you would just film it in your church, wherever, and you would just preach, and people would watch it, most notably with a network called the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, started by one Pat Robertson, which, by the way, still exists and is still making content. What CBN does is they create these preacher shows and they start creating news content surrounding this same idea. So now they're reporting on the Middle East alongside these preacher shows and reporting on the already pretty tumultuous events of the 1970s and 80s in Israel and their relations with their Arab neighbors. They're covering it as news from this dispensationalist angle. So, like, millions of American homes are receiving their news about the Middle East and the wars there from this angle of, oh yeah, we're over there to bring about the end times. And this is the good and Christian thing to do that we're supposed to be doing. And of course, I mean, Americans, listen, I'm a very proud American, okay? My family came around the Mayflower, okay? I love America with every part of me. I'm the first to say we're not the brightest. Like, we're not. Like, historically, if you want to convince us of something, you could just put it on TV. Even more so then, because we didn't have, like, the internet, you know? So people just kind of fell in line immediately. And so it's at this time that now Israel starts to become part of the conversation, and the American public starts to get to know Israel as a country in the Middle East. It's no longer this foreign country that we don't really know anything about. Now people are being told, these are our guys. Like they're going to save the world. These are our guys. However, all of this is just TV. It's not that big of a deal. It's not really influencing politics until the advent of a very, very important political coalition, arguably America's first, meaningful, diverse political coalition that would go on to influence politics in a completely life-changing way. That being 1979's moral majority. Jerry Falwell Sr., if there's anybody you want to blame the whole Christian Zionist narrative on, blame it on him. He's the one to blame. Falwell was a Baptist pastor, very charismatic Baptist pastor. Think lots of yelling, fire and brimstone, real American down-home style Protestant Christianity. He is a huge dispensationalist at the time and is being caught up in this gigantic surge of dispensationalist content. In 1979, he forms what he calls the Moral Majority, a Christian voting bloc explicitly dedicated to, quote, Christian values in America, which can really more be translated to Protestantism in America, and even more specifically, dispensationalist Protestantism in America. In doing this, he turns this gigantic movement of content, faith, weird, independent, non-denominational churches, all that across the country. He takes them, brings them all together, and creates a meaningful political coalition. This is where I'd argue the story really begins in terms of how we got to where we are, because let me make it clear, Falwell was directly funded by the Israeli government. That's not conspiracy, okay? That's not assumption. That is a known fact, okay? He received tons of gifts and flights and benefits, all sorts of stuff from the state of Israel, with Menachem Begin, the prime minister at the time, most notably the first Likud prime minister, if you watched my video on that. Very strong political leader, very revisionist Zionist, right-wing political leader. Menachem Begin is absolutely in love with Falwell and is constantly singing his praises, constantly supporting him, paying for his tours in America. He was literally there when the Camp David Accords were signed. He was there, and he also chartered flights for several other evangelical pastors to be there when Egypt and Israel signed the Camp David Accords. He was there. This guy was so mobbed up with the Israeli government, it's not even funny. And so the Moral Majority, they gain all of this political support in America. They get all of this funding and all of this whatever in order to manifest themselves into American politics, and it's them that got Ronald Reagan elected. Reagan, the Ronald Reagan, arguably the most Israel capitulating president that we've ever had, literally brought neoconservatism into the White House and changed the face of republicanism towards globalism and towards Christian Zionism for decades. Yes, the Moral Majority is why he got elected, famously. They also organized and registered churchgoers in their local congregations to go and vote for Ronald Reagan. That's why Ronald Reagan was able to win in such an immense landslide, because people who hadn't ever voted before are now voting specifically because of the Moral Majority, specifically for Ronald Reagan. And so now they become a political force. Now they are acting as a political force in America that is making decisions and able to influence politics. And that's not where they stop. They padded Congress and the Senate and became a real political force. The Moral Majority was a huge conversation in America for a long period of time. And all throughout Reagan's 8 years, you can see dispensationalist and end time style language with Yitzhak Shamir, the Israeli prime minister, who, let me note, this is how Christian Zionism became so cemented across America, and especially in politics, more specifically with boomers, because Reagan is the penultimate boomer president. Basically every piece of boomer ideology we can just trace back to Reagan and the Reagan years. And so now you may be saying to yourself, okay, well, that's an interesting history as to how Christian Zionism took hold, but what does the future hold for us as we're posturing for war with Iran? Something that I've been saying now for a month, and it seems to only be getting worse. How does that affect politics today, and where does this go? Especially with the rise of a Roman America. I talked about this lightly a few episodes back when we talked about Middle Eastern Christians, but America is quickly being Romanized. What do I mean by that? All the young people in America, like young practicing Christians in America, are Catholic, largely. And at the same time, like Protestant homes, their kids are becoming less and less religious. So these homes that were formerly part of this like moral majority who would have been practicing every Sunday Protestant Christians, they're falling into atheism and secularism while their kids are either driving that push or their kids are converting to Catholicism. So like the average Protestant American home right now, either your kid falls into atheism and now you're no longer Protestant, or if your kid's religious, he becomes Catholic, and now your lineage goes on as a Catholic family. And this is happening all across the country. That's not even to mention like Hispanic migration and therefore an increase in Catholic numbers. What we're seeing is a very, very clear rise of Catholicism in America. And more specifically, we're seeing a huge rise in Catholicism in the right wing, in the Republican Party. See, historically, Catholics were Democrats. People don't know that. This is because historically, Catholics were minorities. Obviously, Hispanics are Catholic, but also we used to consider Italians and Irish minorities. And so they voted for the liberal parties, even though a sizable contingent decided to then go to the Republican Party after getting their money up and kind of being accepted more into American society. Point being, for a very long time, Catholic was not a Republican thing. Like Catholic and Republican, no. The Republican Party was seen as the faith party of Protestant Christianity. But now Protestant Christianity is dying like very quickly in America. Youth conservatism alongside youth Catholicism is starting to grow. You can see it. I mean, if you look at TPUSA, remember that big moment when Jack Posobiec when Jack Posobiec, that guy, came out and held up his rosary, the most like Cole moment of AmFest, but indicative of what's to come. Indicative of what's to come and what is here. I've said it before, the number one conservative youth influencer, Nick Fuentes, is an avowed Catholic. Most of the political commentators, most of the political figures in youth politics and youth conservatism are Catholic. And so this stranglehold that moral majority dispensationalist teaching has had over the Republican Party has very quickly fallen apart, because obviously the Catholic Church does not teach dispensationalism. And unlike Protestant Christianity, you can't just make stuff up in the Catholic Church. And by the way, the Pope has made it very clear in recent statements that no, he's not in support of this war. The Pope, who, let me note, is currently an American. Granted, okay, like he's Peruvian, yada yada, he spent most of his time in Peru, I get that, but he was born on American soil, and everybody praises him as the American Pope, as the first American Pope, and he speaks English with an American accent. So for all intents and purposes, he's American. And honestly, I think the fact that he is ethnically Peruvian, I think that only bolsters my point about the future of faith in America. This is why so much of the rhetoric that you are now seeing surrounding Israel and Iran, surrounding American support for Israel, has quickly gone away from the Christian Zionist message, because now most young people find Christian Zionism abhorrent. And so the political power of Christian Zionism has quickly decayed. It really only exists now in the boomers. The future is going to have to be through actual political mechanisms. Granted, that's if there is a future at all. I've spoken about before that this war is kind of their last hand. Either Israel's going or Iran's going. They both can't stand. And so this is all to say, in everything we've had when it comes to dealing with foreign influence in this country, dealing with foreign influence from the Middle East, it's a very, very simple conclusion. America, your ass got played. But folks, that's going to do it for us today on this episode of The Narrative. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell to get notified whenever I make a new post. Be sure to follow me on Kick, as you can see in the corner here throughout the video. I just had my first Kick stream of the day. We did like a little dual broadcast, then switched over to Kick. It was a lot of fun. I was able to speak kind of off the cuff, very raw with the audience. We had a great time. So be sure to follow on Kick, turn on notifications for when I go live, or follow me on X to see when I go live on Kick and join in the stream sometime. I'm usually live Tuesdays and Thursdays as well as the weekends. And as always, I got to show it a little bit. We now have memberships on the channel. So if you'd like to join the channel, it's I think like $5 a month. You get access to chat emotes. You get access to all of my long form videos early. So hot off the press, fresh before they hit the market, you get access to my videos before they come out. And if you join the $20 a month club, you get access to me. Yeah, that's the tier. I didn't know what else to put, so if you give me $20 a month, I give you my phone number, and you can just like text me, I just give you my cell phone number, and you can reach out. And hey, I guess if you're ever in New York and you want to hang out, hey, you can text me. So if you seriously want to give me, Will Sexton, $20 a month for what I do in return, yeah, we can be friends. You can know me. So I guess that's the trade-off, is I'll compromise my private personal life for $20 a month. So folks, with all that being said, thank you again for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed. And as I always say, God bless you and God bless America. Until next time, folks.